Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. I'm Bard. Bill.
I'm Linda.
I'm Jack. Are we doing?
I'm co-pilot.
Hi, co-pilot.
Are we doing a thing, Bill, or are you having a moment? I don't
No,
know.
we're doing a thing. We're going to be talking about AI in this episode, and specifically, we wanted to kind of kick off with a Google Bard announcement. So, in the ever-increasing pace of AI integration into our lives, Google has just unveiled a game-changing, at least for them, AI upgrade for Android. Google's AI Bard will be starting to read and analyze your private email and text messages going back forever, as long as you have, as long as they have copies of your email. So it says, basically, it's going to be doing this, analyzing the private content of your messages to understand the context of your conversations, your tone, and your interests. It will analyze the sentiment of your messages to tailor its responses to your mood and vibe. And it will analyze your message history with different contexts to understand your relationship dynamics and to personalize responses based on who you're talking to.
Oh, boy.
So what do you think of that?
I think Google Bard's going to get a lot of people who are having affairs in trouble.
Very possibly.
I don't know if it'll get that bad, and the reason I say is because the privacy has already been torn down a little bit with respects to all of the and this is mentioned in one of the articles that you linked to earlier, Bill.
Yeah.
All of the smart home devices that we have that are listening, so your Amazon Alexas, your Google Homes, all those kinds of things. We've already found that they do listen in on quite a bit, regardless of whether you've woken them, quote unquote, or not. And this is, to me, an extension of that. That if you're comfortable with that level of, let's say, eavesdropping in your life around a device that can listen and record what you say and report it back, and you really don't have necessarily control over that. This is an extension of that with AI being used. It's going to use your conversations and everything to train it. And, who's to say that they're not already doing that now with your voice? Like, I have them almost in every room in my house, I'm almost ashamed to say. And, I can almost promise you that it's probably being sent to an engine, for an anonymity is what they'll say that they've done. If they scrubbed it so they can't tell who you are. But, our conversation now is probably being used to train AI somewhere. And they're basically saying, like, hey, we want more context from actual messages and emails. Is probably where they're going with it. But I don't know if are they giving users the option to opt out.
Supposedly the rumor is,
not that I believe it.
Well, right. So according to Bard, apparently the guy that wrote this article asked Bard a lot of questions about it. And apparently, according to Bard, there will be the option to disable it. Now, I don't know if I don't think it will be disabled immediately. You'll have to actively go in and disable it. So how many people are going to know to do that?
I'm
Well,
more interested if you had the ability to delete your data from the model.
Right.
you would have to a degree, the ability would have to be there because of GDPR laws and what Europe has in
Mhm.
place. That would
Mhm.
have to exist.
Oh yeah.
They don't have to honor it for, let's say, if you're in the US. So then what you'd have to do is you'd have to ensure that that data jurisdiction wise never leaves, for like the US, does it go to Europe or something like that? Or for Europe, does it go to the US? They
Right.
have to control that data. That makes training a little bit harder if you want, context between different countries and stuff like that as far as the data being collected. But for Europe, the answer is yes, Seth. They will absolutely have to have that by law.
That's
So
that is encouraging and kind of makes me want to move a little bit more.
But yeah,
well,
we don't
either
have
that
that here in
or
the US.
maybe, yeah, either that or else maybe we just all need email pen pals in Europe that we message periodically in order to keep Google from collecting our
Ooh,
data.
I do have a friend in Great Britain. Maybe I need to email her more.
No,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. So
So-
what you were talking about, Chris, with the smart speakers,
Mhm.
home speakers listening to everything, there was a link in that article on the Google Bard going into your messages that linked to an article about our smart speakers always listening. And yeah, the key findings were interesting. It said that these devices, and they looked at Google Alexa, Apple HomeKit, Google Home, and was that it? Cortana.
Mm.
Man,
and
that's
they
going
said
way
that-
back then. That's going out of your way.
Yeah.
Does
And
Cortana-
what they found is that these devices, depending upon the device, would activate anywhere between 1.5 and a whopping 19 times a day without the wake word.
Mhm.
Just hearing something similar that was enough to trigger it to wake up.
Well,
and-
and quote unquote similar.
Yeah, right.
Man, I don't think 19 times a day is too much.
Yeah.
It-
Like
it's
that's not too much for a false activation. It depends on how long it listens after that.
Yeah, and what they found, it said, let's see, I'm trying to find it here, something like anywhere from 15 to 20 seconds to up to 40 seconds.
That's
And
not too much.
yeah, I'm trying to see. So, oh yeah, here it was. So researchers discovered the devices can be recording the Echo Dot second generation and Invoke devices had the longest activations of 20 to 43 seconds. The HomePod and the majority of Echo devices saw activations lasting 6 seconds or more. The Google Home Mini was often mistakenly activated when words were spoken that rhymed with hey, in
Sure.
other words like they, followed by something beginning with the letter G, or something that contains OL, such as cold.
And I do think some of that in part is because they're trying to activate as soon as
Yeah.
possible to keep up with natural language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That extends to me false in when it activates. So the more irritating part for me is Google has actively made it harder to go back and look to see exactly what triggered it.
Right.
So Gina and I will be sitting watching TV, and I'll be watching something that I can almost tell you for a fact had no reason to activate a Google Home. And all of a sudden we'll hear music playing out of another room.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just require activation, it also requires a request to play something
Mhm.
in that respect. And so it's like, how did it just take garbage,
Yeah.
not try to confirm without a certain level of accuracy? Like, it should know if you're saying, hey, whatever, it should be able to complete that. And if it's unsure,
It should
it
ask.
should ask to confirm. Or they should prompt your phone, hey, were you trying to make a request? If so, it can learn from that. Instead, it doesn't seem like they're tweaking anything at all. They're just letting those errors exist, and those errors existing makes it in my opinion, a shit product. It's not actually improving.
So, Chris, to that, I think this falls into kind of a programming problem with these, in that it only needs to mistake the trigger phrase and any word that could mean play. Because how do you get an album to play? You say whatever service, play X album, play song, play whatever, and there is truly a infinite number of things that it could match with that. So if it for some reason activates and hears something that it could say play, run, whatever, and then whatever follows, it's going to try and match with a song in its media catalog somewhere.
So on that note, to steer us back to AI, those same jackasses putting that kind of programming out there, the same ones building Google Bard, presumably, that are going to turn that loose on your messaging and your emails or whatever to help come up with smart responses and intellectual type of content out of your email. And I don't know how much I trust that. I don't view AI on a high level of that because, again, I look at these products that exist today and they're supposed to be smart and they're shit. And so I automatically screen AI coming from those same businesses through an equal lens.
And they're just going to do it. It's not going to be opt-in.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they don't want to make stuff better for you. They want to improve their models, which is what they're going to use to make.
And on opt-in note, you know, by the time you opt out, they've already collected what they wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
By the time you see the option or by the time they make it available, they've already collected your data. So unless you're in Europe or somewhere where it has the laws where you can put a request to delete your data and they have to provide evidence of that, you know, you're screwed in that respect. Now, what I don't understand is where do I get my value add for that? I never go through my past emails really unless I'm looking for proof of something, a receipt, or did I order this or whatever. So am I supposed to just stop using search then and use Bard to be like, hey, did I ever order this, when I feel like I can probably get to it faster just by searching for it? Like, is Bard supposed to replace search or what?
Right.
What do I get out of that? What do I get out of going through old messages? I never go through old text messages again unless I'm looking for specifically something. So where's the value added?
Yeah, are they thinking that Bard's going to write my emails for me? Because I'll tell you right now, I'll be 3 days dead before I ever have computer do my writing for me.
Yeah, I think that's the plan, is that it's going to be, or you can set it to be your virtual assistant, and you can say, yeah, you can automatically respond to messages for me. And
I have a virtual assistant. It's called my brain.
Yeah.
Right. I would
think that's
prefer
the
to
goal.
use my brain.
And the other goal too is that by reading all of your text messages and email messages and understanding your relationships and your conversations and how you think and respond, they're going to be better able to target you with to advertisers saying, this is this guy's personality, this is how he thinks, this is what he's interested in, these are the relationships he had and what those people are interested in.
I agree with that, and I think that's probably a larger part of it. And especially if you take it out of the context of, okay, so let me not think of Google Bard AI as a tool that I would leverage directly, but more something that enhances my experience in Google's ecosystem. And so where I'll go with this is Google's initial kind of out the gate, you know, having your, you know, for them to create the experience of just kind of knowing what you think ahead of time, right? When you scroll through Facebook and the conversation you were having about boots starts to show up in your feeds or whatever, or you happen to walk by a certain path through a mall and it's starting to give you ads relatable to things that you might actually be interested in.
Right.
Their goal was to always nail what it is that you were looking for at a particular time. But the only way to get that, if that's your dream to just kind of have it figure you out, is to give up your information.
Yes.
And that's always been the trade-off.
Yeah.
You have to open up the door so they can get all the information about you. And presumably by doing that with email and your messaging on top of everything else they're already snooping on, I could just have the thought that, boy, I might need to pick up some toilet paper this weekend. And one day, you know, for Google or whatever, it'd be like, hey, you really ought to order this today to get this in time, because based off everything else we know about you, you're going to need that.
Yeah, and actually the CEO of Google has said that very thing, is that their goal is to be able to anticipate
Yes.
what you're going to want or need before you even know it yourself, and that they can market it to you right at the point where you're going to be needing it. So they want to beat you mentally to the punch.
And there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
There really is.
Well, and because their problem right now is that, or has been, and I think that's getting better today, but the problem has been is that you go out there and you're looking for something that you want to buy, and by the time Google has captured that and been able to turn that around and market to you, you've already purchased the item. So all of those ads that you see, how many times have you purchased something? You're like, oh, I already have this. I don't need to see this anymore.
Yeah.
That's what they want to get around. They want to be able to do it before you know you need it, so that they can direct that purchase to a particular advertiser and make that advertising dollar more valuable to the advertiser, because now they know they're not just blindly throwing it out there and hoping that you haven't bought yet. They know that they're going to get you right at the point where you're ready to buy. So
I mean, because I'm of two different minds of this targeted advertising.
And that'll be hard for Bard to figure out.
Because, well, I mean, I remember, so if you remember before they started doing advertising, internet ads sucked. They were the worst. Like, you'd log into Hotmail and it's nothing but banner ads and column ads for lowermybills.com.
Yeah.
That were obviously made by insane people with access to Flash.
Right.
And I hated that. Like, that was awful.
Yeah.
But I am not sure if having every company on earth hoovering up every single fact they can get about me is better.
Yeah. Well, and interestingly, there was also an article that came out yesterday that said that they've discovered that the NSA has been buying that information on U.S. citizens from companies that are collecting that information, and that's without court approval, which is, of course, in violation of their mandate. But
if it's for sale,
well,
they can buy it.
And that's what the article said, is that the fact that the U.S. government has it should be maybe not the least of our worries, but the fact that this information is out there for anybody to buy. Think how many foreign governments have already purchased that information.
Well, and that goes into the whole prior thing with a few years back with Google and Cambridge Analytica.
Yes.
Yeah. What happened there around trying to persuade political movements, elections, and things like that. That information was up there for sale just through an API, which Facebook/Meta now really didn't have the proper controls around monitoring who was doing what with that data and how much that they could collect. And so if there's no, if the mandate from the NSA is you need a court order to demand some of this information, well, that's great, but they don't need it if it's just available and they can write a check for it. They're just saying, well, this is publicly available information anyone can buy. They're going to write the check for it because they're like, we don't need it for the legal thing. We're just buying the information for our own reasons.
Well,
it's the loophole, right?
Yes, exactly.
Speaking about the election in Cambridge Analytica, let me spin you up a little maybe scenario here. If Bard's has done this deep textual analysis of all your communications and whatnot, you start getting this year targeted political ads that are exactly about the conspiracy theories that you support and tie it into whatever political party they want you to vote for or not vote for.
Okay, but the only difference then is instead of you going and searching for things that you believe in, and
it's brought to you.
You start getting emails that look like they're from legitimate organizations that now have a vast knowledge of what sort of shit goes on in your brain,
Right.
That's
And
that
how
is
to-
a whole new level of advertising hell for those of us who hate political years for
and
this.
not just advertising hell, but manipulation.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because if they
absolutely.
understand your mindset and how
Yeah.
you think and who you interact with, they can use that to their advantage to craft messages that will specifically target
Yeah,
your
what I'm saying.
thought process. Yes.
Well, so, and then by crafting the messages, they're actually crafting how they want you to act. Right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
it even
And
goes
they're
further.
anticipating when they need to do this.
Yep.
To maybe hit you on a day when your emotional state isn't as well according to your messages. And like,
Yeah.
okay, our model shows that he's good for a little push of paranoia right now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you thought Cambridge Analytica was bad in the 2020 election. Imagine these new capabilities given to people by a Bard. But moreover, imagine how
hang on a second. Double the Xanax. Jesus.
But it gets worse because we've also got generative AI to deal with in this election cycle, and we've already had at least one generative AI Joe Biden thing going around.
Right.
Well, and if AI can analyze your text messages, your email, obviously your social media, they're going to know which people are predisposed towards sharing content without any sort of vetting.
Right.
And those will be the first people that these generative fake AI videos will be sent to, so that they can start getting this momentum on the internet before the AIs that are being created to scan and filter out this stuff can even get started.
Yeah.
And the AI companies aren't going to care because they're going to be making their money.
Yep.
They don't have to worry about ethical nonsense.
Right. I this morning before the show, we were having breakfast and we were watching a BBC news program, and they were talking about a new development just happened this week in AI, where AIs had a longstanding problem with mathematics, especially when it comes to geometry. And they said, I think it was Google that had a breakthrough this week related to geometry and AI. And what they did is they found a way. So you could ask previously AI a question related to geometry. And while the majority of time it would come back with the right answer, when it would show the proof was totally fucked up. I mean, it didn't make sense at all because it didn't understand the reasoning or the logic behind it. And it was a rather sophisticated thing. And so Google has fixed that, and they took this whole slate of geometric problems, and then they created, they had mathematicians create every possible proof, because there's multiple ways of proving something in mathematics a lot of times, right? So they had them create every possible proof, and then they scanned that into AI so that it can understand it. And so then there's this they actually created two versions of AI, one that understood and had reference to all of these different proofs for every sort of geometric problem. But then they also had a second AI that was a neural network. And if the first AI tried to figure out a geometric question and it wasn't able to solve it, and this was now the majority, was like it could solve 9 out of 10 questions. The 10th question that it couldn't solve, then it goes to the neural network, and then the neural network looks at it and tries to come up with a new way of proving it, and then submitting that proof to the geometric engine, which could then solve the problem. So they said that has brought it to near 100% accuracy now.
And that's the sort of stuff I think AI is actually useful for.
Yeah.
Right.
But what they were saying is that this now demonstrates a level of reasoning that that this AI has to have. You were listening to it too, Linda, this morning, and so jump in if I missed anything. But they said because there's so much reasoning, and you have to use logic, and you have to consider all these different variables and all of this stuff, and it's got to use a lot of sophisticated thinking in order to be able to solve a lot of this. And they said this is quite a leap forward in AI for this particular process now. So it's growing. I mean, just about every week you can see new advancements in AI. Our friend Ben, he and I were talking last night, and just about the stable diffusion and all the models and these different LoRa's that you bring in that have examples of different types of facial features or body types and all, and different kinds of designs and artwork and stuff that they can use to reference when creating something from text that you have. And they're getting to the point now where they don't need these LoRa's anymore, that these systems are sophisticated enough that they can do it without having to reference other material. And so that's a huge leap forward. So
yeah, it is.
Well, another thing that's kind of come out late last week, early this week, is the release of Nightshade.
What's that? I'm not familiar with that.
Nightshade is a tool that artists can use to basically poison their art, so that if it is used in an AI model without their permission, it will poison the model and potentially do really, really weird things and destroy it. And this is by the same people who came out with Glaze earlier, which is a tool that hides an artist's specific style.
Oh wow! So they have a little battle going on.
They have a big battle going on.
I'm impressed by that they're finding ways to screen their stuff from these tools to help protect their stuff. So as far as AI goes, I'm a big proponent of what it can do and where it can go. But like, if I was to put my money in anything, it would be in projects like that or products like that help protect original artists and stuff. I'm not going to say you can't have artists that build some amazing things in AI, but off the backs of others' work and stuff like that, that's not necessarily original, I do have an issue with. And there's a little bit of a fine line. Maybe it's a little bit thicker of a line than that. But I love what I'm seeing here with Nightshade.
My big issue with generative AI is that the AI companies are making money off of subscriptions, off of everyone who signs up for an account to make art. And their entire ability to make money off of this is derived off of them stealing artwork from other artists and then put into a product that means they're going to get less work. They're going to get.
Would it work for you if there was a way where artists could submit their stuff to the engines and they get royalties based off of how much their content is used?
Absolutely. That's the way it works everywhere else.
Right.
But I mean, that means that subscriptions will have to raise in price rather dramatically, since these AI models can use assets from thousands of artists' work. But there should be compensation and there should be a sign up. And I don't fundamentally care if that ruins the business model for these AI companies. Like, the artists.
Well, I think their business model, to a degree, works, but it's not cutting in the royalties and the payments that are due the artists, and because ultimately it's a business, right? So there's always a model where they have to profit. If they're taking content, as long as you're paying for it,
they have openly said, openly said that they cannot exist without theft.
Yeah,
that their business cannot operate without just taking what they need from other people.
I think that's a blatant lie that they feel that has to be the stance, because there's a lot of other businesses that work in that manner where you pay the person that you're getting this content off of, you take your cut, they take their cut, and everybody wins at the the end of the day. For having rights to, this even exists even in, not to go off too much of a tangent, in golf, in the PGA Tour. A lot of the players there actually have to license away their likeness and what they are allowed to do. And that's how like the PGA Tour works. It's why you have competition nowadays with these other leagues that are starting up, where they don't have to deal with that, where they're like, yeah, I want to just own and do what I want to do without the PGA Tour telling me who I can and take pictures for, and without having to cut them a check for some sponsorship thing. And artists should be treated in the same way across everything. So I don't believe them when they say, we wouldn't exist without it. I mean, they wouldn't make the profits they do without it. They just wouldn't have much.
That's basically it. They wouldn't make
exist. Yeah.
They wouldn't make the profit.
Yeah.
Which to me just makes me be like, okay, well then you get to make no profits until we work out a
like what do you want? Do you want nothing, or like you can't have it all? You can have some, or
no, this is America. We can have it all.
Like, I don't think you should be you should not legally be able to go to a Mid-Journey or something and say, make me something in the style of Miyazaki. Because that's directly
if Miyazaki had provided his content, was getting paid for it.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that
I agree. And that's a common sense. That should exist as a common sense law.
Like, that is something that you could advertise as part of your thing. It's like, our model includes Miyazaki's stuff. Like, you can do this. You just have to accept that you just can't use whatever you can find on the internet and hoover up all of the art on Twitter.
So I have a related question, and that is, I saw this week an announcement from DragonCon that they are banning all AI art in their vendor rooms, right? And they said anybody that has art in the vendor room, they've got to show that it wasn't AI related and all this stuff, and that they whatever it is, they've got permission to use it. And I'm wondering how that's going to affect artists that, for example, you've got an artist that maybe draws an image of the TARDIS floating out in space, right? And he wants to sell that there. But isn't that image of the TARDIS copyrighted by the Doctor Who company? And if he doesn't have a license to replicate that, or even the characters, the different doctors,
So,
Frozen Bill and Linda.
All right. So, we've got some dead air. To answer Bill's question,
they're back.
We're back.
It's still recording too. We're good. Everything's fine.
All right, you're
the
back.
AI did not like what you had to say, Bill.
No, apparently not.
Striking back. But that's kind of been a legal gray area with cons forever, because no one really has the rights to sell those pictures of Wolverine.
Right.
But I also think it's too small of an issue for any of these companies to care about, per se.
Yeah.
Most of these artists are people who are more or less living hand to mouth, and the conventions are kind of a major source of their income often.
Yeah.
But
I've seen a lot of comments in the comment section where people were arguing for, well, why are you banning AI if you're letting people come in and steal the intellectual property of others and produce art with it? Where's the difference in there? And I can kind of see that.
No, not at all. Because you're talking about having someone at your convention who spent hundreds of hours creating the artwork that they're selling, and having someone at your convention who's never picked up a digital pen in their life, but selling the things that they generated. Like, that's not a good look for your con, especially when so much of that is like, your guests are going to be the artists who are selling things. And like, at least they created those things.
Yeah.
Like, that's the point. That's like part of what makes it great is like you see something at a con and you're just like blown away with the sheer talent on display.
Yeah.
And
But I've seen people in those comments argue that the text prompts that they have to use to create some of these more elaborate works of art are very sophisticated and require a lot of practice with, right?
oh no, I'm sorry, Bill, but there's no comparison between that and making a detailed, beautiful piece of work. There's no comparison.
I disagree in some of the advanced AI generated art that can exist out there that doesn't actually rip off from necessarily anyone else. I think it's just few and far between.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be used as leverage into it should be used more. But there, when it first started becoming a thing, some of the art that I saw generated out there that was not, clearly, taken from another, example or whatever, but was used by, literally breaking out what text was fed to generate said fantasy image or whatever was actually pretty unique in how they do it. And yes, it can be copy and pasted and tweaked to be something else, but to some extent, again, I wish there was a way where someone can say, can register or log that as in this was first created or posted by someone to generate this type of image, and that's where it comes from. And if someone can find an OG original art generated by someone else where it copied from, then put it out there and disprove it. But I would make that same argument that there can exist, detailed input from text to image that can do that.
There can, but the level of skill required to create a generative piece of work as opposed to creating an original piece of work.
We're not talking about the skill set necessarily. We're just talking about the right or wrong of it and whether one should exist over the other. I mean, there's I would pay someone $1,000 for a handmade image that was just as good as an AI one. I'd probably pay $25-$50 depending on what that image is, but I would definitely pay way more for the person I know that handmade something that I'm paying for their skill set, for their hard work, as opposed to an AI generated image. I think that's something that may kind of flush itself out over what people actually put their money towards.
I straight up wouldn't pay for an AI image unless I knew for a fact that the other artists who had actually made the art were getting compensated as well.
I'm assuming that's where it came from, but yes.
Right.
Yeah. If an artist wants to train a model on their own style,
and that's what I mean.
I view that as lazy, but at least
lazy
that would be legitimate.
I don't know. If I was going to do a comic book series, I might spend a few months, training it to do something, and then once I know what my story is going to be, I can start cranking out, volumes or whatever a lot more faster than doing it a lot by hand because I've trained an AI model in my style.
And, I mean, some artists are going to use AI in things like generating their backgrounds. Like if you don't have a full art team, things like you often would buy a background pack that you could use in your comics and things. Like art is highly specialized, and sometimes a comic will need a full team unless you're a great artist who can do backgrounds, architecture, character work. There's just so much that goes into into actual real art.
Yeah, looking at Dragon Con's information on 2024 for the art show, nothing specifically is mentioned about AI, but I could see it would be covered by a lot of other areas, like they must comply with, be bound by all laws, ordinance, regulations of the county, state. The art show director has the last say on if it gets displayed or not. So they're probably covered, but I could get murky.
Maybe some of that language is just there to protect the con as an organization. So if you did get in trouble for selling your Doctor Who fan art, they'd come after you as opposed to coming after the con.
Right. Yeah.
So to rein this back in,
here's their statement.
So
So Dragon Con's updated its AI statement as follows. No AI artwork of any kind will be allowed to be sold or distributed in the Dragon Con art show, comic and pop artist alley, or vendor halls. Failure to comply with our AI policy can lead to immediate removal from the show floor. There will also be some inquiries as to using copyrighted material on your products. If I ask you about your product and if you have a license for said product, please don't take offense. So it sounds like they're going to be cracking down a little more on everything.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know how licensing works. Maybe there is a version of licensing that many of these artists have. I actually don't know. I've assumed it's fan art, but maybe these people maybe they have covered themselves legally. And
yeah, I mean there are not businesses, but there's a lot of media content providers or whatever. You can buy a license from them that allows you to use it. It works a lot that way with some of the music licensing stuff. How how some YouTubers will play certain music in their backgrounds or whatever. You can get a license that allows you to play all of that. Mm-hmm. And then, if anyone comes with a complaint, you just point to that license and say, piss off. So, right. You can work a lot of different ways. So to rein this back in then, because we're running a little long, we're a little bit past 40 minutes. Yeah. So Google Bard, AI, art, are we still seeing this as forward movement, or are we seeing still scary things? Overall, what's your sentiment, Bill?
Yeah, I think it's a little scary at this point, and I can say that kind of thinking about where this is going, Linda and I have already moved all of our financial and medical and retirement critical email accounts over to Proton Mail. And off of Google. And so now we're just using Gmail for just general stuff. So anything that's needs to be secure or that we wouldn't want anybody getting access to is now on Proton Mail. And there's other secure email services out there. And then for texting, we're pretty much using Signal messaging for texting rather than SMS voice chat, because it'll be able to read that if you're on an Android phone. And even Apple's going to be doing the same thing. They said Apple, Google, Meta, Samsung, they're all getting ready to deploy this. So it's not just, I don't mean just to pick on Google here, but
yeah. Linda, how are you feeling about it, sentiment wise?
Oh, terrified.
Seth, you're good.
I mean, I think most generative AI should be thrown in the garbage and lit on fire until we can figure out a good way to use it. And everything else, it's going to be more of the same but worse.
Okay, all right. For me, I'm not necessarily scared of it. I don't see it being as good as some portray it to be in terms of people talking about replacing jobs and stuff, and to Seth's pretty critical stance on generative AI. I mean, the reality is it's not that good because it's copying and taking from others that actually did put in that work. So, for me, I have less concerns on the scary part, replacing jobs and all that kind of stuff. My concern is the over marketing, the overbearingness of slapping AI on everything and calling it that, and people not really understanding some of the nuances or differences between is it AI, is it machine learning, is it just regurgitation of someone else's content, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where I sit. I'm still a little bit of a mixed bag. But for anyone listening or watching, let us know down below what you think about it.
Agreed.
Are we robots talking to you right now?
We could be generative AI.
Generative AI. We're generated video, and the pause earlier was a hiccup in the system. The CPU maxed out for a minute.
Yeah.
They were listening.
Could you guys imagine a lazier way to make this podcast than having AI do it for us?
I'm going to put some effort into having AI write a podcast episode.
There you go. I like that. That would be awesome.
All right.
Get a script for each of us. All right,
what
folks.
happens if it's better than us?
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Again, like Chris said, let us know what you think down in the comments. If you have any opinions, we'd love to hear them. And we will see you next time. Until then, be careful out there and watch what you say.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.